Live from the Harriton High School television studio in Rosemont, Pennsylvania, this is the Ram Report, Election Edition. Welcome in. I'm Ricky Sayer along with HHS-TV Political Director Ben Feldman here for a special election edition of the Ram Report.
On this, the last show before the election, we'll be discussing the candidates, their appeal, as well as showing a mini documentary about our time covering the DNC protests last summer.
Now we'll discuss the presidential race in a moment, but we feel that it's more important to start with the Senate, another contentious battle this election cycle.
While much of our attention this election cycle has been on the presidential race, many believe that the more important race will be that of the Senate. Republicans currently have a slim majority in the Senate, and most of the seats up for re-election this year are Republican-held. The Senate gets to confirm justices for the Supreme Court, and with the passing of conservative Justice Antonin Scalia, bringing the court to a 4-4 conservative-liberal tie, the Senate will change the judiciary for perhaps the next 30 years. In Pennsylvania, incumbent Senator Pat Toomey is running against Democrat Katie McGinty.
Pat Toomey started his career as an investment banker, then a Wall Street wheeler-dealer overseeing stock trades in New York, London, and Tokyo.
As Tom Wolf's chief of staff, millionaire Katie McGinty pushed the biggest tax increase in decades. Every working Pennsylvanian would have been clobbered.
In the Senate, it's no surprise Toomey's been siding with Wall Street, voting to allow banks to continue making the risky investments that wrecked our economy.
Now, McGinty's proposing middle-class tax hikes so big, even Hillary Clinton won't go that far. McGinty's backed over $3,000 more per household.
The subject of these political ads was the economy, with both candidates asserting that their opponent will only stick up for the upper class. In general, Toomey has been pushing McGinty as unsafe due to her support for the Iran deal and sanctuary cities, among others, while McGinty has been pushing Toomey as bad for Pennsylvania because of his support from the NRA and his pro-life stance. McGinty has been polling about 4 points higher than Toomey in recent polls.
We'll now turn our attention to the main focus of the 2016 election, the presidency. We'll start with Donald Trump, the Republican nominee. Trump has been running with the slogan, "Make America Great Again."
Nimai Shukla spoke to a Trump supporter yesterday about Trump's appeal.
I care about the economy, and based on the way the country's going as of now, I think it's time to have some change. And based off his running mate's record, I think that's a good choice. And he says what people think, even though sometimes I might not agree with everything he says. I'm just glad he has the courage to say it and confront the establishment.
Our own Jordan Soffer reached out to Trump via Facebook to ask for an interview with the campaign. The response he received read in part, Hillary Clinton discriminates against poor African-American children by opposing school choice. Jordan was able to interview the Pennsylvania Republican Party Communications Director Megan Sweeney over the phone. You can listen to that on Ricky's YouTube channel.
We'll now turn to the second major party nominee, Hillary Clinton. Clinton has been running with the campaign slogan of Stronger Together. Here's what students had to say regarding why Hillary appealed to them.
Because she agrees with a woman's right to choose, which is really important to me. She agrees with gun control, and that closes the loopholes so people who shouldn't have guns don't have them. She believes in equal rights and raising the minimum wage, and she thinks that immigrants should have the ability to become citizens of the U.S.
While both hardline Clinton and Trump supporters see this race as an existential crisis with their candidate being the superhero, many Americans dislike both candidates. Many see Clinton as a corrupt liar and Trump as an evil, immature child. In many instances, this election has seemed to devolve into sordid name-calling that suggests 4 polarized years of stagnation to come, regardless of the outcome.
A good deal of Clinton's support comes from those who believe that Donald Trump would be dangerous, possibly leading America to war. A good deal of Trump's support comes from those who believe that Hillary Clinton will be more of the same or worse, sending jobs abroad and putting us in crippling debt. For many, it's a lesser of two evils. Last summer, the Democratic National Convention was held in our own backyard in South Philadelphia. Without official DNC press credentials, Ben and I covered everything that happened beyond the security fence. Ben spoke with many of the delegates before and during the convention. Here's what some of them had to say to him.
This summer I had a chance to interview several delegates from, among other states, Florida, Iowa, and California. Our conversation generally started with Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the WikiLeaks scandal.
I'm very disgusted, and I'm very disappointed.
They have been sort of colluding against Bernie from the start.
A literal vast right-wing conspiracy.
They've been listening to 30 years of propaganda and lies that's been put out by the other side.
Hillary Clinton has an unprecedented record, and she's got the most experience.
Hillary is pretty much the definition of establishment politics.
Another common topic was the most important issues that the Democratic Party faces.
I think the most important issue is healthcare.
Healthcare.
Healthcare. Unity.
We are so divided.
Income inequality. It's the big umbrella.
I really think that it's, income inequality.
The last major topic we discussed was voting for a third-party candidate.
I don't want Donald Trump for president.
Which is a greater moral dilemma, voting for Hillary Clinton or being complicit in the creation and coming about of a Donald Trump presidency.
I'm not going to throw my vote away. After this week, I will probably vote for Hillary Clinton.
During the DNC, protesters gathered to protest everything from a corrupt system to a carbon-based economy. Contrary to what you might think, it wasn't conservatives who protested the DNC. It was for the most part more extreme liberals, many of whom supported Bernie Sanders.
We spent the week filming the protests. Before we show part one of the mini-documentary, we want to mention that these protests were going on in triple-digit heat. We also want to mention that we spent over 20 hours filming the protests, so this is extremely condensed.
In the shadow of City Hall, we first met protesters holding a small rally.
There is no leadership here. It's just various people come up and give speeches about Bernie Sanders.
Following the rally, protesters, which had grown exponentially in size, marched down to the AT&T station, the closest point they could get to the convention hall. Protesters were intent on convincing superdelegates leaving the station and walking to the convention to vote for Bernie Sanders. They're trying to tell everyone to vote for Bernie!
The protesters here are demanding entry here, it looks like.
Police had to set up a blockade with their bikes, effectively closing down AT&T station to stop Democracy Spring protesters from forcing their way past the security perimeter. This would eventually lead to police detaining 50 protesters. On day 2 of the DNC, in the hours before the official roll call vote, protesters were again out in force in a last-ditch effort to convince superdelegates not to vote for Hillary.
Nominate Sanders! Nominate Sanders!
As we speak, the roll call is taking place.
We are right with the protesters as they listen to the roll call vote. Protesters had moved in front of a jumbotron by the time that Hillary had officially received enough votes to win the nomination. They listened as their leader spoke at the conclusion of the roll call vote.
All votes cast by delegates be reflected in the official record.
Yes!
And I move that Hillary Clinton be selected as the nominee of the Democratic Party.
With Bernie's campaign officially over, Bernie or bust supporters were left with no other choice other than to bust.
Welcome to Philadelphia, where obviously our democracy is being fought.
Now angrier than ever, protesters calling for a revolution once again demanded entrance to the DNC next to AT&T station.
You call yourself police? Go arrest the real criminals! They're in there!
Protesters did leave the station area only to return minutes later united, arms linked together. Then, in one of the most surprising things that we saw all week, the police began to retreat back behind the security fence. Protesters then decided they weren't going to let the police close the gate. With the gate closed, protesters continued to yell and taunt police through the fence. According to a police report, one protester went as far as to grab a police officer through the fence. Police responded using pepper spray on the protester. In the ensuing chaos, our video of the incident was lost. This is video we found online. One by one, protesters then jumped the fence, entering the restricted area, in full knowledge that they would soon be arrested.
God bless you!
We'll get to the second part of that documentary in a second, but we first want to turn it to third-party candidates. This election has provided the chance for many third-party candidates to rise, some with more success than others. We'll begin with a report from Josh Pontel on Gary Johnson, the Libertarian nominee.
Gary Johnson is running for president under the nomination of the Libertarian Party along with his running mate Bill Weld. Johnson was the former governor of New Mexico from 1995 to 2003. As a Libertarian, he supports cutting taxes, increasing free trade, upholding the Second Amendment, allowing amnesty for illegal immigrants, abortion, and gay marriage. In general, Johnson supports policies that are a combination of liberal and conservative ideas. Despite Johnson's above-average appeal for being a third-party candidate, he has had some significant slip-ups on the news.
What would you do if you were elected? About Aleppo. And what is Aleppo? You're kidding. No.
According to the Real Clear Politics average, Johnson is currently polling at 4.7%, which is down from his best polling at 9.2% in September.
The next third-party candidate we'd like to address is Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party nominee. Stein's campaign is considered very similar to that of Bernie Sanders, calling for reforms to campaign finance, a complete shutdown of carbon emissions, much higher taxes on the upper class, among others. At one point during the DNC, Jill Stein joined in with the protesters. As she marched along with the protesters, I was able to make my way through the crowd so I could ask her this question.
What do you think of Bernie Sanders endorsing Hillary?
I think it's very sad. I think it's heartbreaking. I hope he will see the light now that the emails have revealed how Hillary and the DNC were plotting against him and sabotaged his campaign.
We'd also like to talk about Evan McMullin, the nominee of the Independent Party of Minnesota. He is currently polling at 26.5 in Utah, the state on which he is focused the most. While Trump has still a lead in Utah, McMullin still has a fighting shot.
Remember McMullin's name because if it's a close election, he could end up as a spoiler if he wins Utah, as it could deny both candidates of the necessary 270 electoral votes. If that happened, the president would be decided by a vote in Congress.
Other third-party candidates include Darrell Castle of the Constitution Party and Chris Keniston of the Veterans Party. There is also Vermin Supreme, an independent candidate who has been running since 1988 on a platform of toothbrushing laws and a pony-based economy.
We're mentoring Vermin because Ben here is a big fan and interviewed Vermin at the DNC. Here's a small clip.
My name is Vermin Supreme. I'm a friendly fascist. I'm a tyrant that you can trust, and you should let me run your life because I know what is best for you.
Interestingly enough, Vermin played a large role in de-escalating fights during DNC protests. Find out more about that online.
Many DNC protesters would turn to third-party candidates on days 3 and 4 of the convention. Here's part 2 of our mini-doc on the protests.
We actually thought the protests were dying down on day 3 of the convention. Our belief in a calm night was shattered, however, when protesters threw a casket with the words DNC on it over the security fence.
Election fraud! Election fraud!
The protests were nonviolent until around 11 p.m. while Obama spoke inside the convention. A small group of anarchists wearing black masks and helmets were able to open up a gate in the fence using bolt cutters. This led to panic as anarchists surged forward into police lines where they were swiftly arrested. The vast majority of protesters, though, ran the other way, some with their hands in the air indicating that they were being nonviolent. We found ourselves in a secure position atop a barricade and watched as police inundated the area.
The police have moved in front of the fence and have created a new fence right here. They're using their bikes as barricades between the protesters, the fence, and them.
The majority of protesters made it known that they did not want to be associated with the anarchists. The division between the majority Bernie supporters and the more extreme activists spilled over to day 4 of the DNC, which can only be described as a mess, as extremists and Bernie supporters argued. On one side, there are the extremists.
We must take our freedom. We must let them know that we will not stand. Burning a flag is not violence.
On the other side, there were Bernie supporters. They repeatedly tried to stop extremists from making things worse, as anarchists had done the day before. But overall, what we took away was that many protesters had decided to leave the Democratic Party and join the Green Party or even vote for Donald Trump. They wanted anyone but Hillary to be the next president.
One final time in front of the protests outside the Wells Fargo Center in South Philadelphia, home of the 2016 Democratic National Convention, I am Ricky Reports.
It's unfortunate, but we had to cut a lot out of that to have enough time, including a really interesting storyline about the protest group Democracy Spring. You can see more of our coverage of the DNC protests on my YouTube channel. Posted are much of the raw video from the protests, as well as interviews with celebrities like Carl Rivera and Michael Che. In late October, Nick Miriam and I covered a Hillary Clinton rally in Philadelphia. Here is my report. Speaking to a group of largely young supporters in the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton has been making the point why she is better to represent their interests as president. In a rare campaign appearance together in Philadelphia, Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine spoke on October 22nd at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Park. Tim Kaine spoke first on the brisk Philly night.
Because if you can be president of the United States, you can be anything.
Clinton spoke next, specifically addressing education.
And let's make sure every child has a good school with good teachers, no matter what zip code that child lives in. And let's do more to support teachers and provide them with the kind of support they need to do the most important kind of job there is.
Clinton made the point that she wants to bring more technology integration to high schools.
I want to bring modern technical education back to high schools because a lot of young people deserve to have that kind of preparation.
She also said she would make college more affordable. Reporting for HHS TV, I am Ricky Report. Stay informed, Harriton.
On election night, Ricky and I will be live with the results on the Ricky Reports Facebook page. For more of our election coverage, and we promise there is a lot more, check out youtube.com/RickyReports or RickyReports.tv.
Before we go, I want to give a little editorial as producer of this show. I will not take a side in this election, but I will say this. It has been very disappointing to see how in this election, friends have turned on one another for the simple reason that they support some presidential candidate. This isn't right. You should not judge someone based off their political views. I sincerely hope that once this election is over, we can all come together.
We would like to thank you for watching this special election edition of the RAM Report. A huge thanks to Ms. Thomas and the school administration for letting us take some extra time today. For the entire HHS TV crew, I'm Ben Feldman.
And I'm Ricky Reports, reminding you to stay informed, Harriton. Have a great rest of your day today and an even better day tomorrow. And may government still be intact by Wednesday morning.